Hi, this is Mrs. Powers. Excuse me. Excuse me. And I am going to read lesson 59 for history today. And I'm sorry, but I realized that I haven't been going through your pre-test with you. And so I hope you can forgive me. I just completely forgot about those. I know that's terrible, but I did. I forgot. So I'm going to read the lesson and then we'll answer the pre-test questions, okay, at the end. So let's take a look. All right. We're talking about Eleanor of Aquitaine today, a queen of two nations. So here we go. Picture in your mind a feisty young girl, one who is not only full of life, but smart and beautiful too. In your imagination, place her in a castle filled with dancing, singing, and roaming troubadours reciting poetry. Can you see her laughing with friends, dining with royalty, and frolicking about the court? If so, you are capturing a glimpse of Eleanor of Aquitaine. This young, vigorous beauty grew up to become not only the Queen of France, but also the Queen of England. Because of her spirited personality and extravagant background, Eleanor of Aquitaine was undoubtedly one of the most influential women of the Middle Ages. Personally, I find her fascinating. Eleanor's heritage can be traced back to Charlemagne, the once great civilizer of the Frankish Empire. As our story unfolds, you may notice that the bloodline of Charlemagne's greatness seems to run through the veins of Eleanor. Eleanor's father was the Duke of Aquitaine, a beautiful province in southern France. When her father died, Eleanor inherited Aquitaine as her own. As a political move to gain Aquitaine, Eleanor's first marriage was arranged when she was only 15 years old. Though the couple had never met, Eleanor married the young Prince of France. His name was Louis VII. Shortly after becoming husband and wife, they were crowned the King and Queen of France. They were only teenagers. Eleanor liked being a queen. It seemed her destiny. However, she didn't care at all for her new home in Paris. That's where Louis lived. The castle in Paris was far colder and drearier than her estate in Aquitaine. It was also far quieter. She quickly set about decorating the walls with bright tapestries and hiring musicians to fill the emptiness. But these outward changes didn't change the coldness she felt in her heart toward Louis. Louis VII wasn't at all like the brave and romantic knights Eleanor had grown up around. He was a shy, quiet man of God and a serious student. In his somberness, he reminded Eleanor more of a monk than of a king. She was not impressed by him or inspired to be his queen. But Louis loved his young queen. He wished to make her proud. When he heard of the Crusades marching to free the Holy Land, he thought it a perfect way to do something lasting for the Lord and to win the heart of his queen. Unfortunately, Louis VII accomplished neither. The crusade he joined turned out to be disastrous. It was the Second Crusade. But the disaster was not all Louis's fault. Eleanor was partly to blame. As a 25-year-old adventure seeker, she looked at the crusade as an opportunity to see the world and leave Paris for a time, as if she were in a parade rather than a war. Eleanor packed her finest clothes and accessories and took her doting attendants along to accompany her to the Holy Land. Her baggage alone was an embarrassing mistake. Louis and his troops could hardly maneuver through the rough terrain with their battle supplies, much less with Eleanor's stuff. After 3 months of harsh traveling, the Crusaders stopped in Constantinople, the luxurious capital of the Byzantine Empire, to visit and plan strategy with the Prince of Antioch, who also happened to be Eleanor's uncle. With great wealth and a strong personality, Eleanor's uncle was everything she thought a king ought to be. It made her disapprove of her husband even more. But Louis began to disapprove of Eleanor as well. After making a spectacle of herself over her uncle's riches and military strategies, Eleanor was arrested by her king and escorted home on a ship. Treacherous sea conditions almost killed her, but Eleanor survived, only to find herself a hardened and humiliated queen. To make matters worse, Louis suffered complete defeat during the Second Crusade. Eleanor's uncle was killed in battle due in part to one of Louis's poor military decisions. It was a tragic event that turned Eleanor's heart against Louis for good. At the age of 29, Eleanor convinced the archbishop to have her marriage annulled based on the fact that she and Louis were actually fourth cousins who should have not been married to begin with. Eleanor left Louis VII and their 2 daughters and headed back to Aquitaine, the one place where she found great comfort. However, there was no peace in Aquitaine. Because of her wealthy estate, she was nearly kidnapped twice. She knew she needed a husband to protect her and her land. It seems that while still married to Louis, she had noticed a rugged young prince who she imagined could be her true knight in shining armor. His name was Henry. As the great-grandson of William the Conqueror, Henry was the Duke of Normandy and the Count of Anjou. Even though he was 11 years younger than Eleanor, she believed his ambition and strength would surely make her proud. They married right away. In many ways, Henry did make Eleanor proud. He convinced the King of England to make him his heir. That means when the King of England died in 1154, Henry became the next King of England. His official title was Henry II, but most called him Henry Platinger. Sorry. His nickname was passed on from his father, who often wore a sprig of a broom plant in his hat. Henry's new title of king meant that Eleanor was again a queen, but this time she was the Queen of England. Eleanor's new home in London was interesting. She saw ice skating for the first time in her life and found the city bustling with busy merchants. But more often than not, she traveled with Henry and their children to visit the numerous territories they ruled. In the process, both Henry and Eleanor noticed that the laws in one area were completely different from the laws in the next area. It was difficult to rule the people fairly. Henry improved the situation by introducing a trial by jury, where 12 honest men were chosen to judge a person's crime. It became immensely popular and was a huge contribution made by Henry II and Eleanor. Other than that, Eleanor contributed her extravagant taste and romantic ideals to the English. To make London more like her childhood home, she brought in decorators, minstrels, and troubadours to liven things up. A troubadour was a knight well versed in poetry and music. In bringing in the arts, Eleanor brought a more refined chivalry to the English. The term chivalry is used to describe a code of conduct a knight would live by. Of course, knights already lived under a strict ethical code in England long before Eleanor came around. But under Eleanor's influence, a true knight was not only a man who was strong and courageous, he was also a man who could express tender words of love. So great was Eleanor's influence that love and admiration for women grew to new heights in the Middle Ages. Poems and love songs were written and rewritten by ordinary knights and troubadours alike to honor legends like King Arthur, Guinevere, and Charlemagne. Women were elevated from a dreadfully low status to one highly exalted. Though life was looking good for this ambitious couple, the king and queen had their problems. Henry was known for having a terrible temper. At times he would go into such a bad rage that he would shout and throw furniture. One day Henry spoke so furiously at the Archbishop of Canterbury that 4 of Henry's knights went and killed him. That archbishop's name was Thomas A. Becket. Apparently, Thomas Becket and Henry had been the closest of friends in their younger years. Becket's senseless murder haunted Henry the rest of his life because his bad temper had spurred on the incident. Okay, we're going to start back. Sorry, I had to jump and do something really quick. All right, we're going to jump back in. So Eleanor and Henry, she's the Queen of England, right? So and she made England a lot better for women, right? That's where we were. Okay, so Henry and Eleanor end up having problems, and King Henry locks Eleanor away in a castle for a very long time, for 15 years, and won't let her come out. And then King Henry goes off on one of the crusades and he dies while he's out. So then she is set free and she's 67 years old at that time. Okay, so that's where we're going to pick up. All right, you would think that because of her age, Eleanor would retire to a free and quiet life after all she had endured. But not Eleanor. She had had enough of her quiet life at Salisbury Castle, her prison of 15 years. Now free, she started life all over again, stronger, wiser, and far more compassionate toward the less fortunate. Eleanor had much to offer England as the Queen Mother. Her son Richard I, sometimes called Richard the Lion-Hearted, because of his bravery, was the new king. Richard the Lion-Hearted is so fascinating that I'll devote another lesson to him. But what you need to know now is that he went on a rather long crusade to the Holy Land. In his absence, he unofficially left England in the hands of the person he trusted most, his mother Eleanor. She did a great job, too. With many years to think about the more important things in life, Eleanor ruled England better than most. Despite her age, she traveled extensively and kept close contact with her people, both in England and in Aquitaine. Even at 70, she had the energy to scour all of Europe and find Richard a suitable wife, since he had never married. All the while, she kept close tabs on her other son, John, for fear he would fight his brother for the throne of England. Eleanor was right about her son's rivalry. Richard and John threatened each other for years. Interestingly, Richard had long been Eleanor's favorite and John was Henry's. Each parent wanted their favorite son on the throne. At one point, Richard found himself a prisoner of the Germans. It might have been John's opportunity to be king, but Eleanor was too quick and shrewd to allow this to happen. She raised a huge ransom to offer the King of Germany for Richard's release. Her ransom worked, and everyone present wept at the sight of the old queen embracing her favorite son upon his release. But a far sadder scene was soon to come their way. Richard was shot in the neck by a crossbow. He died in his mother's arms. It was heartbreaking for Eleanor. In Richard, she had molded the brilliant leader, the romantic knight, and the strong king that she had always dreamed of. Now he was dead. Her other son, John, whom she found greatly disappointing, became the next king of England. Eleanor did her best with John. Even in her old age, she continued to have a heavy hand in ruling England, and even in her last days, she did much to improve it. As she traveled about and saw the damage done by royal wars and battles, she had great compassion for the common people. Eleanor granted all kinds of charters giving freedom to the citizens of small towns. They were given freedom from certain taxes, freedom from bridge tolls, freedom from military service, and the freedom to choose husbands for their daughters without a lord's approval. I doubt Eleanor realized then what impact she was having on the world to come. These free citizens took far more pride and care in their communities, and they prospered. For centuries to come, kings learned from Eleanor and prospered their kingdoms through freedom and a just legal system. Though this would make a great end to the story of Eleanor, it isn't the end yet. When she was more than 80 years old, Eleanor was still powerful enough to be a threat to others. Her own distant grandson named Arthur captured her for an enormous ransom from John. After years of being a failure in Eleanor's eyes, John finally had a chance to prove himself to her. John rescued his dear old mother from Arthur as if she were again a young damsel in distress. He threw Arthur into a dungeon, and he was never heard from again. With that, Eleanor finally had enough adventure. At 82, she retired to live her final days with the nuns. They fondly said of her, "She enhanced the grandeur of her birth by the honesty of her life." She surpassed almost all the queens of the world. On April 1st, 1204, Eleanor of Aquitaine died. She was buried at an abbey in France next to her beloved son Richard and not far from Henry. Eleanor's body holds a dainty book, probably to represent the poetry she loved. Her life was one of such adventure, courage, and drama that even long after her death she inspired the writings of countless tales and poems. I think that's what she would have wanted. All right, so that's the end of lesson 59. Let's take a quick look at pretest 20. That's where you'll find the questions for this lesson. It'll be question, number 3. The adventurous queen of France and England. So who was that? Who was Eleanor of Aquitaine? That's the answer for number 3. And then number 4, a knight well versed in poetry and music. Do you remember the answer for that? What is a troubadour? Okay, so troubadour is number 4. And the favorite son of Eleanor of Aquitaine. Who was her favorite son? Richard the Lionhearted. And the favorite, oh, and here's another one. Number 6 is also part of this. And who was the favorite son of Henry II? John. John was. Okay? So Richard was Eleanor's favorite and John was Henry's favorite. Okay. That's it for today. I hope that you enjoyed this, and I will see you next week for your next history lesson. Thanks, guys.